Hello and welcome on in to Classic Pro Wrestling with the WFIA podcast show. I am Chris DeCarlo, the Vice President of the WFIA. Above me to the corner of my right is the man with class, Mike the Class DiGregorio from Rhode Island. How are you, sir?
I'm good, everybody.
Up, still always in the corner to my left is podcast host, producer, WFIA board member, Mr. Benny Scala.
I'm here in not so sunny Florida, listening to the rain outside and wishing I had an Arc instead of my 2023 Nissan Kicks.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Over under Benny to my left is also WFIA board member, friend, historian, Mr. Jason Monday. Welcome.
What's going on, everybody? Glad to be here.
And last but not least, of course, our friend up in the middle there is author, improv, movie star, historian, Mr. Mike Messier. Welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Glad to be here and glad to see everybody. And yeah, I do have my book, which is available on Amazon, Audible, Hoopla, Fight or Play Basketball. Every shot counts. Young adult story. And glad to be here, guys.
Yep, thank you. And a little bit of WFIA business first before we get the show rolling here. Again, if you could go to the WFIA.org, O-R-G. Two things. You can buy a t-shirt like the one is behind me. We also have coffee mugs for sale. Also, of course, we want everybody to join and be a member of the WFIA. And that is $50 for the calendar year. You will get a monthly newsletter via email. You will get 10% off anything you buy in the WFIA website there at the store. And we're hoping to have a future convention in 2027 for the 60th anniversary of the WFIA. So we want you to do that and appreciate you. Also, hello and welcome to everybody in our live chat. Benny will keep us apprised of any questions or anything interesting going on there, if you will, please. So, guys, we had a great show a couple weeks ago going over 1983. And here we go again this month. We are live. Sorry. How could I forget, right? Live right now on the Playa Entertainment Network on YouTube. And then also you can go back and watch this anytime you want. And Benny, we are on the radio station. Why don't you mention that?
Yeah, we're on Want Radio. This will probably be streamed tomorrow night at 7 o'clock on Want Radio. I'm trying to get this spot so that we can go live also on Want, but I'm working on that.
Cool. And also, we are on Spotify now under Classic Pro Wrestling with the WFIA, or put in WFIA, and I'm sure you'll see it. Within 24 hours, we will have this episode that is on tonight on Spotify for everybody out there. So, guys, 1984 was really a big year for some of the promotions across the United States. And, of course, there was Maple Leaf Wrestling in Canada, but then even we're going to find out Vince McMahon took that over from Jim Crockett Promotions within 1984 there. So, Benny, if you will, put up our disclaimer first.
Yeah, sure thing.
This is under Copyright Law 107, Fair Use. We are criticizing these videos that are my personal library. I do not sell them. I do not rent them to nobody. And we're going to mention them for the historical use of classic pro wrestling. And with that, Benny, if you will, please roll 1984-1, please.
Here we go.
Hello, everybody. I'm Don Kosh, your host for Portland Wrestling, along with my partner, former world heavyweight champion Stan the Man Stasiak, and I know that's not Buddy Rose.
Keep control of the match as much as possible, but there will be no disqualification no matter what they do. Introducing in this corner, 248 pounds from Las Vegas, Playboy Buddy Rose. His opponent in this corner, 244 pounds from Milwaukee, Matt Bourne.
incredible. That is just amazing. We will await the arrival of Ryan Ritchie.
Now, the grappler one, who is usually the spokesman for this duo, and Ted Oates have really got it in for one another.
Well, we don't really, no trouble today, Austin.
You know, it just so happens that I have a monitor in my dressing room, Lance, and I've been sitting back here listening to you run your mouth about me.
At 240 pounds, Washington, D.C., the Alabama heavyweight champion, Pork Chop Cash.
Right. The new Alabama State heavyweight champion, Pork Chop Cash, taking on Paul Brown. This is our third match. A lot of great action still to come. Jimmy Golden will be in action, as well as the...
Well, gentlemen, if you all understand the contract and the stipulation, I would think we could get on now with the signing of the contract. Mr. Cornette, representing the champions, you're to sign for
referee. So let's pick up that action from the Hemisphere Arena.
That's right, Steve Stacks. We do pick up the action at the Hemisphere Arena. And there's Bruiser Brody beating on my cousin, and all my cousin was doing was...
For having words and even a few physical problems. Killer Khan looking around back there. Kevin wants Gordy out. Here they go. Gordy agitating. Look out. Here's Khan now. It's from behind.
So, guys, a lot of great classic action there from throughout the year of 1984. As, again, we go west to east with these clips and going over each territory back in the day. And Portland, we saw Buddy Rose, going after Maniac Matt Bourne there with their feud, continuing Central States action there with the grapplers. And they had a lot of people go through there. It was wrestling at the Chase, then it was St. Louis Wrestling, and then it was Central States Wrestling from at least the end of 83 to 88. But I guess there was some early shows from Central States Wrestling from back in the day. I don't know why we didn't see all of them yet, or somebody sitting on that footage. And Southeastern also featured young Arn Anderson, or Marty Lundy was there also. Mid-South, again, that was like, we saw the beginning of like the Midnight Express, Eaton and Condrey version against the Fantastics. They wrestled that feud all over the country and territories back in the day. Also, they had Mr. Wrestling number 2 turn heel and went up against Magnum TA as his popular stardom started to rise in the Mid-South until the NWA. And Southwest was always a territory with all kinds of action. We saw Bruiser Brody there against Joe LeDuc. And then, of course, WCCW guys. 1984 was the first card, the Parade of Champions there at Texas Stadium. And that year it was in memory of their brother David Von Erich, who unfortunately passed away before that event. I always thought instead of Kerry, I know it was Kerry, they put up against Flair to take the title for a short run, Mike Messier. But I was always, I like Kevin Von Erich. I think it should have been Kevin, maybe. I don't know. What do you say?
You know, that's a great question. And I think they did a segment on World Class Championship Wrestling TV where Fritz alluded to a coin flip, or they actually did a coin flip between Kevin and Kerry. And Fritz was always trying to put over, oh, it could have been Kevin just as easily, you know. But I mean, I think that the fans seem to have an affinity. The majority of the fans, besides yourself, Chris, obviously, had more of an affinity for Kerry. He just had the certain. He looked like they say he looked like a Greek god with the long black hair, and he had a more chiseled. I mean, Kevin was pretty ripped too, but I mean, Kerry just had something about him. Maybe it was almost like a certain childish naivety. It's hard to explain, but I mean, I remember with Kerry Von Erich as a babyface, he would do something that was kind of heelish. If he was like in the middle of a match and he was getting taken advantage of, Kerry would just leave the ring and walk around the perimeter of the ring for a few seconds. And I mean, that's something like Larry Zbyszko would do or something, but Kerry as a babyface would do that. And, you know, Ric Flair has talked about sometimes Kerry was probably under the influence of something while they were wrestling. But I always liked Kerry Von Erich. I was a little bit surprised, not to jump ahead to 85, but when they had Kevin Von Erich versus Ric Flair in the sort of rematch at the second annual David Von Erich Parade of Champions, they did not end up giving Kevin the belt. So it did seem like, for whatever reason, if Kevin didn't want the responsibility of being world champion, if Fritz preferred Kerry over Kevin, if they felt the fan base, maybe the female fans like Kerry over Kevin, they went with Kerry. And it's a little bit odd because Kevin was actually older than David and Kerry and Mike and Chris. And the Jack, who passed away, I think Jack might have been the oldest of all of them, but he died at age 5 or 6 in the backyard. But for whatever reason, a lot of people thought David was the oldest because he was the tallest and he died first, but he wasn't. Kevin was the oldest, then David, then Kerry, then Mike and Chris, and somewhere the child Jack was at the top of that mix. So interesting family. I did like the movie Iron Claw about them. A lot of people didn't, but I actually did like it.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we can get Mr. Kevin Von Erich on this show down the road and ask him some of those great questions. Of course, then, maybe, I don't know, they felt bad for him that he didn't get the NWA title or gave him the opportunity to really hold it. He was the WCCW champion there in 86 and 87 for a while. So, they kind of appeased him with that, or appeased the fans of Kevin with that. I don't know. What do you think, Benny? Some great classic footage, of course.
It's really funny. I was watching that Memphis show about an hour and a half ago with Austin Idol and Rick Rude. And it's really funny. Like, Rick Rude looked like a high school kid next to Austin Idol. I mean, Idol was jacked. And I think, that was right at the beginning of Rude's career. But I do believe that show, either that show or the week after, was the debut of Randy Savage in Memphis. I mean, I was watching it and I'm thinking, man, oh man, all these territories, world class, Portland, I mean, all these great territories, and they're all gone now. It's just sad because, each one of them had their own TV, each one of them had their own loop, with the shows, each one of them had a huge roster of guys who made a living. And that was all, it was all taken away.
Well, Mid-South, their B show was Power Pro Wrestling from 84 to 87. WCCW had Championship Sports out of Fort Worth. So, yeah, I mean, some of those territories had, 2 shows during those times too. So, I mean, that wasn't too shabby. Jason Monday, what do you think?
1984 was a great year for me as far as being a fan. I was an 11-year-old kid, and a couple of things were happening simultaneously in my household. We got cable TV that year, and I started transitioning from buying comic books to wrestling magazines. So I started learning the wrestling world and more territories. And what was really great on TV when I would watch Mid-Atlantic Wrestling and they would tease a new talent coming in, they would show clips from other territories. And with cable and the magazines, I got to really see where these territories were. And like, Rick Rude and Austin Idol and things like that. I seen Rick Rude as a kid, as a prelim in Mid-Atlantic, but never, he had obviously improved. And Austin Idol was there before my time. It was great. And I love seeing the Portland stuff. That's just great to me. Great Buddy Rose at 247 pounds, my ass.
Yeah. I think his ass weighed that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was just a great year. There was a lot of things going on. Everything was not only me as a fan, but the business was crossing over to another level.
Starting to boom, as we will see. Mike DeClass, a lot of great talent over those territories back in the day, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was interesting was that the year also that Starrcade '84? Was that Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair?
Yeah, with the blood stoppage and Joe
Yeah,
Frazier.
the $1 Million Challenge with Joe Frazier.
Yes, indeed, you are right on a closed circuit. Yeah, that was crazy. Joe Frazier almost really got it from Dusty Rhodes because he was heated, but I could understand why. I mean, over blood, blood is nothing, right, in pro wrestling. So that was a weird way to give Flair $1 million, like he didn't need it even back then. So yeah, as we talked about, like WCCW World Class Championship Wrestling, their B Show Championship Sports out of Fort Worth. Now that was every Saturday night. It was Saturday Night Wrestling and then Championship Sports, I understand. But these TV shows, these territories had some top quality matches each week that we've seen. Of course, like Jason, you mentioned the magazines. I'm right there with you. I only growing up here in Western New York near Canada, we only got Maple Leaf Wrestling, WWF, very little AWA, some Florida. But, with those magazines, you read them and look them and get to know everything. But later then, of course, we would see all these territories and have all this great classic footage from back in the day. So, it goes pretty good. Guys, Austin Idol, Rick Rude, also the team. Well, they're wrestled signally, but they wrestled as a tag team with Stan Delariat Hansen and Jesse Ventura in '84 against Jerry Lawler and Austin Idol. That's a great match. You guys can go back and look at that. And a surprising tag team, you got to say, Mike Messier, indeed.
Jesse and Stan Hansen. Yeah, especially because when I think of Jesse Ventura, I guess I'm thinking ahead 4 or 5 months or whenever he got over to WWF again, because he was scheduled to be in a series of matches with Hulk Hogan. I think he might have had 1 or 2 of those house show matches, but he started suffering the blood clots because he was a Navy SEAL. He served in Vietnam. We thank him for his service, of course. But Jesse's career as an in-ring competitor was short-ended by health, and luckily for him and for us, Vince McMahon Jr. Offered Jesse the commentary spot, and Jesse took it over, I think, from Angelo Mosca, one of your favorites, Chris. And we were off and running with at least 2 of the greatest commentary teams of all time, Jesse the Body Ventura and Vince McMahon, and then the second one, of course, Jesse the Body Ventura and Gorilla Monsoon, that really seemed to like each other. They seemed to have a good rapport, Jesse and Gorilla, because it was not terribly antagonistic. You definitely had the babyface Gorilla and you had the heel Jesse, but if you watch WrestleMania 3 they did together, they really seemed to enjoy each other's company, which made it easy on the ears for all of us.
Yeah, and before that, Memphis, Jesse was still with the AWA and was teaming with Mr. Saito as heels. And also, like you mentioned, Jesse Ventura, started the feud, arm wrestling, then the match with Ivan Putski in '84, at the end of '84 there. And then, of course, the scuffle with the Hillbillies, Saturday night's main event. And then, from there on, Jesse was commentary all the way. But we talked a little off camera, guys, but Jesse, I guess you can say, kind of passed the baton and broadcasting to Heenan. I think both WWF and WCW. In WWF, there was in about 1990 was Jesse's last WrestleMania 6, and then he kind of faded away, and then they brought him in WCW in 92 to 94, and then same thing. Jesse faded away, and and of course Bobby Heenan took over there. So it was passing the broadcast skills baton to the brain in both organizations back then. But all plus for us fans. Benny, if you will, please roll clip number 2.
And here we go for the championship, the heavyweight title of the world. Defending champion Rick Martel takes 2 hard knees to the midsection. 3 score from gorgeous Jimmy Garvin.
But they give away. Can you imagine with that kind of weight going for you and still giving away 420 pounds? If my arithmetic is correct.
And it's all. Bob, I know, being the television champion, NWA television champion, I'm sure I can probably speak on a proper level with the U.S. heavyweight champion. If you don't mind, I'll conduct this interview. Okay, thank you. Ricky, good to see you. I'm glad. Congratulations on defeating Dick Slater for the NWA. Thank you.
This is it. Mr. R going up against Ted DiBiase. DiBiase didn't even wait for the bell to ring. And it is the National Heavyweight Championship on the line.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to World Championship Wrestling. On behalf of WTBS, it's a pleasure to welcome the World Wrestling Federation. Exciting new matches, great competitors from all over the world. And here's the man to tell you all about it. Here's Vince McMahon. Vince?
Thank you very much, Freddie.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. It is indeed a pleasure to be associated with WTBS, and we promise to bring you the greatest in professional wrestling entertainment in the world today. We will have this week, as a matter of fact,
Sullivan back reinstated. Mr. Sullivan, if you have any comments at this time, I would entertain them.
Oh, I wouldn't like to interrupt you, seeing that you are the premier announcer, but I noticed in your...
The Piper will no doubt catch a few catcalls from this capacity crowd when he disrupts. Attacking Hulk Hogan.
Some good rare ones there as we continue on into 1984, coming from west to east. And of course, the AWA, that was footage from Winnipeg, and it was under TSN Wrestling, but it was AWA, of course. A lot of the matches and cards took place from the Winnipeg Arena there in Canada. Of course, that's, AWA, they kind of say they had even though Hogan left and then people started to leave him like Ventura and Heenan, but they said AWA had a big year in 84. Rick Martel becoming the champion. I thought he was a good champion. They had, the Road Warriors come in and then later become AWA tag team champions over the Baron and the Crusher. And what about that tag team match? A lot of beef in that ring. Blackwell and Bundy against the Road Warriors there from St. Paul Civic Center. Just in Steamboat, we saw Steamboat Tully. That would leading to their match at Starrcade 84, as Mike DeClass would mention, of course, and Flair Dusty throughout near the mid to end of 84 with Starrcade 84 there, Thanksgiving night, Greensboro, North Carolina. Some great Georgia footage there. We're going to get to in a minute, guys. I figured I'd have to throw in Ted DiBiase against Mr. R from back in the day. Of course, Mr. R they thought then was Tommy Rich, which it was under a mask, but that Mr. R ended up to be Brad Armstrong, because Tommy Rich would come out and wave to DiBiase and cause some grief during that match. And then, of course, we already mentioned Black Saturday, as it was July 1984, when Vince McMahon Jr. showed up on WTBS Wrestling, which was always the Georgia territory, NWA. And then later, they would come back with Gordon Soley, and it would become Championship Wrestling from Georgia into 85, because they had both WWF owning that time slot on WTBS at 6:05 and Sunday. And then they came out with Championship Wrestling from Georgia with bringing back the Dean. We heard his golden voice, Gordon Soley. Of course, Florida was still red hot with Dusty Rhodes against Kevin Sullivan feud. And Barry Windham, Mike Rotundo were there. A whole lot of action all over. And of course, WWF we'll get into in a little bit. That was a start of a really big year for them, and the rest is history as we know it. So, Mike Messier, what do you think?
Well, I picked up a cheat sheet that if the viewers at home want to look into this, it's pretty fun. ProWrestling.fandom.com has a breakdown of the year 1984, which I use to refresh my memories. And I mean, there was a show in Memphis, June 25th, 1984, that was called, they called it their Star Wars show, CWA, and they had an attendance of 10,032. This was the show that had that famous Randy Savage pile driving Ricky Morton through the table. It's funny because you had a clip of David Schultz, Dr. D. David Schultz, and Roddy Piper as a tag team in the WWF. I actually saw them live in 1984 as a small child. They were on a show that I was at where they defeated in short order Ivan Putski and Tony Gurria. They beat them in about 2 minutes. Because it was the last show of the card, and I think they were running pretty late. This was at the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland. And on that same show, which was March 4th, 1984, 18,000 people were there that night. Hulk Hogan defended the title and won via disqualification over the Iron Sheik. The best match on the show that I remember is Tito Santana and Paul Orndorff. Online, it says it was a no contest, but I remember it being a draw. And they had Andre the Giant, Tony Atlas, and Rocky Johnson that were still the tag team champions, defeated Sergeant Slaughter and Afa Insika in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And this was when Slaughter was in the middle of transitioning. They had started the feud with the Iron Sheik, but he wasn't a full-on babyface quite yet, because if you remember, and that's an overlooked thing from 1984, because Slaughter had left by the end of 84, but for like 6 months, Slaughter was right up there with Hogan. It was pretty interesting because they gave Hogan the title run, but then as soon as the Sheik lost the title to Hogan, he started this feud almost immediately with Sergeant Slaughter. And I think online you can find Madison Square Garden, a famous boot camp match between Slaughter and Iron Sheik, where it's really a fun match, and the crowd is going nuts for these two guys. And Slaughter and the Iron Sheik had great chemistry. Behind the scenes, it seems like they trusted each other because they really played stiff, it seemed. And it was a hell of a great time. It seemed like a real party in Madison Square Garden for people to see Slaughter and Sheik in the boot camp. And I think this was the year, Chris, even more so than 83. This is where Vince, Hogan getting the title in late January. The Cyndi Lauper involvement came later on in the year. It's interesting. I think I saw on this that Cyndi Lauper made her Piper's Pit debut on the same day that the NWA invaded the Meadowlands. They had this Night of Champions show where they had like the Road Warriors versus I think it was Jerry Lawler and Baron von Raschke, and they had Steamboat and Flair wrestle for an hour. And so while that's going on in the Meadowlands, meanwhile, Cyndi Lauper's popping up in Piper's Pit. If you look at that website, Pro Wrestling Fandom, I think it's prowrestling.fandom.com. It's a tale of two worlds, really. It's like you have the WWF world of all these pop culture things, Cyndi Lauper, MTV, all that stuff's going on in 84, Hogan. And then in the rest of the wrestling world, you got Randy Savage pile driving Ricky Morton through a table, and you got Dusty Rhodes bleeding profusely at Starrcade. You got Kerry Von Erich in front of 47,000 or whatever it was. I think it was 47,143 or something like that. But Kerry Von Erich winning the title for his brother in the Cowboys. I think it was Texas Stadium. And like I said, it really feels like two different worlds that were starting to coexist. The emerging sports entertainment world of New York, Vince, WWE, Stamford, Connecticut. The original Vince McMahon has passed away in 1984, so now Junior can do whatever he wants, and he is doing whatever he wants. And meanwhile, the old territory system is strong. I mean, it's still very strong. And
yeah, even though we see
Dusty
Vince
Rhodes, I found a mistake on Wikipedia. They say that Dusty Rhodes beat Ric Flair for the. Yeah, they say that Dusty Rhodes beat Ric Flair for the NWA World Title in June in Florida. He did not. It was a non-title match, but Dusty booked this thing for the Eddie Graham Florida promotion where they had the Lord of the Ring thing. And I remember reading about this in the after magazines like Mike was talking about, where Dusty won like a ring and he won a watch and he won $100,000. So I mean, it's a great year for wrestling, no matter where you were or what you were watching. But like I said, it really felt like this is when the divide got very clear. Vince is doing sports entertainment. Everyone else is doing pro wrestling, and pick your poison.
Yeah, I mean you're right, and to mention there, Vince McMahon Jr. We talked about him taking over, and Benny would mention Hulk Hogan's first appearance was at Wrestling at the Chase, but it was WWF TV, WWF's Wrestling at the Chase, out of St. Louis, Missouri, there with and Mean Gene Okerlund next to McMahon Jr. Who would have thought you'd ever see that, right? And Junior was just starting to invade these territories and their TV time slots too back there in '84, and then of course the future on. Benny, lot of feuds as we've seen throughout the AWA. Like I said, they had a lot of things going on there, and to the WWF, like we mentioned, was really this breakout year. In fact, if you go back and watch, I don't know, a lot of people may have not caught this, but I caught it. Vince Sr. was holding by the curtain when Hulk Hogan would walk by him to the ring to take that title from the Iron Sheik. And then, unfortunately, Vince Sr. passed away, but he was there. And remember, we talked about before in 1981, he told Hogan, "You're going to go make a movie. Go ahead. You're never going to come back here." But Vince Jr. changed that in his foresight. And but it was ironic though, right? To go back and watch that match, and you'll see Vince Sr. standing there at the curtain before Hogan goes through it. And Hulkamania was born, as they say. Although it was born, you're right, guys. Benny mentioned last week in the AWA first, before WWF, but it was really born on that natural big stage to all of us across the country. So go ahead, Benny.
No, I was going to say I have an important announcement. Your mom says hello, so you want to give a shout out back to your mom. What's your mom's first name, so we can all say hi?
Nancy DiCarlo.
Hi, Nancy.
Yeah, and my wife, they're down there, of course, watching as we are live on the Playa Entertainment Network YouTube.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yep, we appreciate everybody checking us out each and every week here. So, Benny, go ahead with your thoughts on the classic clips we saw there, and then, of course, the WWF starting their breakout year.
Yeah, I mean, I did see, maybe it was the first clip, but Portland Wrestling, the color commentator was Stan the Man Stasiak, the master of the Heart Punch, who about 11 years before had beat Pedro Morales he was a 9-day champion. He lost to Bruno 9 days later at the Garden. But it's just the recurring theme to me is how blessed we were as wrestling fans all over the country to have all these great promotions, with all these great wrestlers. And yeah, of course they gravitated to the WWF eventually, but I will, to my dying breath, say that we were way better off with all these different territories, all these different TVs, and each one of them, like I thought Memphis, the storylines were absolutely incredible. The way they built storylines, and who did it? Was it maybe Jarrett and Lawler?
Yeah.
Now they have how many people, Mike, do they have? You think in WWE Creative, 50 people? Like,
I would guess 20, but
yeah.
Wow. And we kind of see where that goes. But Jason Mundy, what are your thoughts? Especially their Maple Leaf Wrestling was under Jim Crockett Promotions until about July, August. Then Vince Jr. took over running Maple Leaf TV with WWF people, and of course Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens with WWF cards from then on. And but we saw even Greg the Hammer Valentine out of Mid-Atlantic there getting into it with Dick Slater, and then he goes over to the WWF too, though.
Yeah, and what was great about Toronto, it was one of those cities where you could have NWA, AWA, even WWF, talent there. And like you said, it was predominantly there for a while. Right there at that transition time, it was a Mid-Atlantic / Toronto Maple Leaf talent switchover, and every now and then, not much, but every now and then we would get Maple Leaf talent come down to the Mid-Atlantic. Trying to think of the guy's name. Angelo Mosca came, and Angelo Mosca Jr. was Mid-Atlantic champion in '84, but there was a homesteader from Maple Leaf that came down a couple of times in the Mid-Atlantic, and I can't remember his name. That's it. That's it.
Was it Leo Burke?
It was Leo Burke. Yeah. And that clip you showed with Rick Steamboat and Tully Blanchard, if anybody ever wanted to get into wrestling and be a predominant heel, they need to study Tully Blanchard. He was the perfect heel. And he was really finding a groove starting right there. And him and Ric Flair had a little angle going where, Flair was kind of a tweener. He wasn't a solid baby face and wasn't a solid heel, but they had a feud. It was pretty good with, Tully Blanchard influencing Wahoo, turning him heel.
Turning Wahoo
heel for a
little bit.
Yeah. And Flair called Tully Blanchard a Cabbage Patch Kid on TV. It was pretty funny.
Before he would bring in Nicola Roberts, better known as Baby Doll.
Baby Doll.
Yeah, and even before that, he even had Paul Jones as a manager for a little run there. But it was a good time, and that clip of Ricky Steamboat, during that time, Ricky Steamboat could have won governor of North Carolina if he had chose to run. That's how popular he was.
I bet.
Yeah, because he left, so-called left to start his gyms, and then you probably will remember that J.J. Dillon, and they bring in the cast to a Steamboat gym and beat up Vic Steamboat. I don't know if that was really his younger brother or not, but of course Steamboat was the wrestling name, but beat up Vic Steamboat. So, of course, Ricky had to come back into the scene, and, he did get that 1 hour match with Flair there, Greensboro, before Starrcade '84. And
Yeah. They would wrestle each other, but they would also help each other out throughout the year, Flair and Steamboat. It was odd, they would tag team and watch each other's back and then wrestle each other in the big cards.
Right. And Mike Messier mentioned, yes, I mean, that too, there we saw 84 into 85, AWA, I don't know, the powers that be with Jim Crockett Promotions brought us Pro Wrestling USA TV show. And as you mentioned, Mike Messier, some great cards came out of the Meadowlands Arena there in New Jersey. So a lot of that footage we'll see in the near future from our friends on the Savoldi Wrestling Library and their Ultimate Classic Wrestling channel that's available through streaming. Mike DeClass, as we got into some of those clips, the WWF, of course, would start their breakout year there, of course, with Hogan and everybody else coming over and going full steam into 85.
Sure, it was interesting to see Piper and how Piper Pit. They had better segments when it came to those shows with Piper's Pit, and I remember the Brother Love show and all those over the years in the '80s, and it's just amazing how, to me, it's true. The wrestling fan kind of gets cheated now with all these not having all these territories, unfortunately, and it's true. Even the price of a ticket now, when you go. It's not going to be. You're not going to see the quality. You're not going to see the amount of the quality you saw back then. I mean, you do have some quality matches, but some of the stuff seems repetitive. You know what I mean? But back then, it was original. You know what I mean? So it was fresh on TV. You had, you had the NWA, you had the AWA, and then all the different territories under the NWA. It's just a shame, and I can see why some people are, kind of. Are rooting for AEW to kind of give a little competition there, because that's what makes it great for the fans is to have more than just one outlet and not a monopoly.
Right. Mike Messier, your thoughts on seeing that? Well, I got to see the rest of that match, even myself, believe it or not. Jerry Blackwell and King Kong Bundy as a tag team against the Road Warriors.
Yeah, and that was a part of the fun stuff of feuds carrying over from one promotion to the other, and sometimes morphing or tweaking. But basically, Bundy was kind of a would-be member of the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, the Spoiler, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Georgia being managed by Paul Ellering. Bundy was kind of their associate or their assigned hitman. And then they really did an awesome job with this very unique program. I think this was still in '84 of Paul Ellering trash talking King Kong Bundy on commentary with Gordon Soley. Paul Ellering not realizing that the microphone was still on. He thought they were in commercials. And he's basically telling, hey, Gordon, how could we bring Bundy into the Legion of Doom? His food bills would put us out of business. Ha, ha, ha. And then he's basically making fat jokes. And Bundy comes out of storming to beat up Paul Ellering because he doesn't like being made fun of behind his back. And then we're off and running. And I think Bundy and the Masked Superstar defeated the Road Warriors somewhere, maybe in the Omni for the national tag team titles, and so on and so forth, until the Road Warriors went to the AWA. As you said, in August, they defeated, was it the Crusher and Baron Von Raschke, which is really a generational war. There's probably a 20-year age gap with all those guys. And then the Road Warriors are basically, I think the Road Warriors story of '84 has to be talked about a bit because they were heels that were getting increasingly more fan applause. And they brought in King Kong Bundy from Georgia to AWA, and like I said, continuing the feud of Bundy versus the Road Warriors, and they put him together with Crusher Blackwell. I think they even called Bundy Boom Boom Bundy or something like that. So they put Bundy with Blackwell, the B&Bs, and both guys are girthy, let's put it that way. And they have similar physiques, and Blackwell could throw a drop kick. Blackwell is another big man that's underrated during that time. It's too bad we never saw Blackwell versus Hogan like in '85 or '86 in WWF. But basically, Blackwell kind of looked like one man gang, but I would say Blackwell was a lot more mobile than one man gang. But the two of them are fighting the Road Warriors, and it's a lot of fun. And like I actually thought Pro Wrestling USA, which was the NWA and AWA and Memphis all coming together for some shows, I was remembering them together in '85, but you're right. They did get funded in '84. According to Wikipedia, which I didn't realize either, they had this 21,000 fan show, Comiskey Park, September 28th, the original Super Clash. It had Rick Martel versus Stan Hansen for the AWA World Title and Ric Flair versus Magnum TA for the NWA World Title. And I think they had a bunch of 6-man tags on that show too, with like a lot of Japanese wrestlers. So it's a pretty loaded show. And if I'm remembering this correctly, I think they eventually released this show as a series of 3 VHS tapes, where each VHS tape had like 4 matches on it. And I believe the whole thing is somewhere on YouTube or one of the WWE's things. But 21,000 people to see a live show in Comiskey Park with Rick Martel versus Stan Hansen and Ric Flair versus Magnum TA. I mean, if we could create a time portal, I would love to be in the audience for that. And also the Steamboat Flair one from the Meadowlands, and Kerry versus Flair in Texas. I mean, these are some really strong wrestling shows, in my opinion. And like Jason said, reading the wrestling magazines, I remember my father handing me the Sports Review Wrestling magazine, where Ric Flair's got Ricky Steamboat in the abdominal stretch, and Steamboat looks anguished as his torso is getting ripped apart. And in the corner is like Kevin Von Erich throwing Buddy Roberts into the corner in that 6-man Bad Street USA match from Texas. And those two shows took place like in the same month. They were both in May of '84. And just like I said, pro wrestling was going in 2 distinct directions. I know which side that I preferred, but I did like all of it.
Right. And Jason, getting back to you, before we kind of mentioned that Flair Steamboat match would headline the card, it was entitled Boogie Jam '84. from Greensboro, North Carolina, and Junkyard Dog was even there. Big Cat Ernie Ladd. I mean, there was some good matches on that card even too back in the day.
Oh yeah, this was a big deal. I mean, Jimmy Valiant, love him or hate him, he was a big deal in Mid-Atlantic, and this was a kind of a boost for him, you know, to just show, because he had been feuding in the early '80s with the House of Humperdinck, then Gary Hart's family, and then it transitioned to Paul Jones's army, and it was a big deal. And I remember this is also about the time where they brought Big Mama in, and they did the video with Jimmy sitting on the street corner, and Big Mama comes around the corner, and then they play Michael Jackson's Beat It, and they get in a limousine and all that, and Boogie Man Jam 84 or Boogie Woogie Jam 84, whatever it was called. I think it was a Dusty. I think this was one of the things Dusty first did when he took over booking from Dory Funk Jr. and Ernie Ladd. I think was one of the first big cards he was promoting.
Months before Starrcade '84, they're in that same arena, Greensboro. Yeah, I mean, just of course, then you mentioned it, Mike Messier, Slaughter, and Sheik were headlining cards, and you didn't even have Hogan on that card because it was that good, and people were drawn into that feud. Of course, USA against Iran, right? We kind of almost see that play out in this modern day, and you know, we're remembering, of course, the beloved Iron Sheik, Khosrow. What a legacy, what a career he had, when you think back about him. And yeah, Piper's Pit, of course, Mike the Class mentioned. Piper's Pit began in '84, and with Snuka and the Pineapple just really putting that show on the map. But as we saw last night, Benny, on your show, remembering the stars of if it wasn't for them putting over guys right back in the day, people would call it like a squash match, you know, or you know, Dr. D versus Scrub or whatever. But not only jobbers, but enhancement talents, and they were all very good. Of course, we remember them. You remembered them last night on your show with Nikita, which was very good. You know, yeah, if it wasn't for them putting these big stars over, all, you know, there's early year 70s up until the mid 80s. In fact, another thing we got to mention, WWF would also take over the TV. Well, of course, we talked about Maple Leaf Wrestling, but they would take over all the TV away. Not even AWA had TSN, which we saw from Winnipeg there with Rick Martel against Jimmy Garvin. But yeah, Benny, right? If it a lot of stuff back in '84 and even before that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really nice to watch, but it's sad at the same time, just because, you know, things will never be that way again. And, you know, if AEW can give WWE some competition, that's great, but it'll never be, you know, like being able to go to the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis every Monday night, or, you know, Jack Witchy's. Mike, was that in Providence, Witchy's?
It was close. It was in North Attleboro, Massachusetts, just across. Yeah.
All right, but I mean, I think they ran every week. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if it was every week, but it might have been. And there's still people in New England that still talk fondly about Jack Witchy's, and whenever they do, they always say the same names. It's always Chief J Strongbow, Haystacks Calhoun, Bruno Sammartino. It's usually it's in that order of the guys they like there.
It wasn't that big of a venue, though, right? What, 1,000 people maybe, or was it even that much?
I think it was even less, and it was what they would call like the C show these days. Like, they typically didn't have a world title match there. It was typically maybe a tag team title match, maybe Tony Garea or something like that. But
Chief was very frequently in the main event. You're right.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, there's people up there in New England that still talk fondly of that experience. Yeah.
Well, I mean, how cool is it? I mean, even Memphis, Mid-South on Monday night. You imagine being able to go see wrestling every week, and there were good cards on Monday night. To me, like, how did it get any better than that as a wrestling fan?
The closest thing I can tell you is I did experience that at Daly's Place here in Jacksonville. For basically 3 years, AEW ran Daly's Place into the ground because during the pandemic, they were still Daly's Place was perfect because it had a roof and the 2 side openings. And I did feel like I was going to a weekly promotion because it was, for 3 years it was.
That's, to me, wrestling should be that. I mean, it should be, frequent and affordable, not whatever the hell. What did WWE even charge at the Meadowlands for SummerSlam? I think the cheapest seats were around $100.
And then going back to Vegas for WrestleMania next year too. I mean, it's just outrageous. Jason Monday, question to you. Being from North Carolina, the Carolinas, there was Greensboro weekly or Charlotte weekly, or was it those were every month?
Yeah, I think they were every 2 weeks, I think, if I remember. And usually, believe it or not, Greensboro usually outdrew Charlotte.
I believe it.
Yeah, and but Charlotte was the headquarters, but Greensboro was the big, and I think at the time it was because it was more centrally located for both Virginia and South Carolina to easily get to Greensboro.
Right.
So they put their major cards there, and it was after the success of the '83 card with Slaughter and Kernodle and Steamboat and Youngblood that led to the development of Starrcade. That was just, it was an ongoing, and North Carolina had a bunch of hopping cities. It had Asheville, Fayetteville, Raleigh, Dorton Arena. It was a hot territory.
Right, indeed. Well, guys, this week, Benny, if you will, please put up my ECMC still pick. As we will mention, there we go. We will mention each and every week on this show until somebody helps out our good friend, Mrs. Robin Restaino, being in Western New York here. ECMC Transplant, ECMC Hospital is located near Buffalo, New York. It is 716-898-5001. Blood types are A negative, A positive, and O. If anybody can reach out to them and help our good friend, Mrs. Robin Restaino, get a new kidney that she desperately needs to live a good, healthy rest of her life and be with us. We greatly appreciate that. And Mike DeClass, why don't you tell everybody about our Independent Wrestler of the Week, please?
Okay, this week's Independent Wrestler of the Week is Dave Yen out of Chaotic Wrestling. She's a former Chaotic Women's Wrestling Champion. She's basically wrestled in quite a few different indie promotions up in the Northeast. So she's a veteran, probably has been at it for about 6 to 10 years.
Wow, and still on the independent scene. Some of these people, we saw a pretty good one last week that you mentioned. They should be on TNA, NWA, AEW, WWE. I mean, these people are pretty damn good.
Yep.
And why don't you go ahead with our military salute to service this week? Sure.
This week's salute to service is Tarzan Baxter, U.S. Navy, but he also went by the name of the Wrestling Pro in NWA. So he was in Georgia Championship Wrestling there. He actually was one of an enhancement talent for one of Hulk Hogan's first matches down there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the picture kind of resembles somebody or one of the interns or somebody masked wrestler. That's another thing we miss, right, guys?
Yeah.
Masked wrestlers. There's only one in NWA, which is Scion, and he's pretty good, but I wish they'd bring him back throughout all the remaining promotions we have today. Sorely missed. But yeah.
El Grande Americano's not doing it for you? There's like 5 of them now.
Yeah, that's not working for me anyway. Scion does a better job in the NWA promotion there.
He's Austin Idol's son, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's true, but that's the gimmick. It might be true. I don't know, but well, guys. Also, Benny, if you will, please bring up my PSA of the week. Each week we kind of mix it up here. This week is the American Brain Foundation. It is AmericanBrainFoundation.org, O-R-G, and this covers like MS, Parkinson's. There is actually a brain disease, it is called. So, everything, our brain controls everything, right, in our bodies. And this is a worthy cause to donate and spread the word about the American Brain Foundation. So definitely check them out there online. And guys, another great show this week, Reliving 1984. And we look forward to going over each and every year here on Classic Pro Wrestling with the WFIA podcast. Mike Messier, Jason Monday, we appreciate you guys. We thank you for your time to be with us and your knowledge. And we look to the future with you.
Good to be
Thanks
here.
for having us.
All right, guys. Remember, watch, like, and subscribe right here on the Playa Entertainment Network YouTube channel. And of course, we are on Spotify. We are on WANT Want Radio, Benny. And why don't you take us out of here, guys? Thank you so much. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
All right. Great show, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.